Back to the show. This is Phil. This is a Phil Vischer podcast. I am here with Skye Jitani.
Hello, Phil.
Hi, Skye. And Katelyn Beaty.
Hey, Phil.
Hi, Katelyn. Welcome back to the show.
Thank you.
This is your third time?
Third time.
Third time.
It's a charm.
You think so?
Oh, gosh, I hope so.
Third time's a charm?
Yeah.
It means you did something twice and it didn't work. And so you're an optimist. If you're a pessimist, you say, I'm done with that. If you're an optimist, you say, I bet the third time's a charm.
So you wouldn't say the third time's a charm?
I'm just curious where it originated from.
It originated somewhere. I got to sing the theme song. Hey, it's a podcast. What do you know? Hey, it's a podcast. And we got video. Hey, it's a podcast. So lend an ear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. Oh, we'll talk to Skye.
Hello, Phil.
Hi, Skye. And Katelyn, too.
Doodly-doo.
We don't have a guest, just Katelyn here for you. But you're very stylish in the black with the turtleneck and the thing. If people can't see what Katelyn's wearing, she's looking stylish. Whereas once again, Skye is wearing the last clean T-shirt that he had.
You assume it's clean.
Hey, it's a podcast. So lend an ear. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. The Phil Vischer podcast starts right here. What'd you do for 4th of July?
I went to a lakeside cabin rental with my mom's side of the family.
What lake?
Lake Michigan.
Oh, the lake.
Oh, the lake.
The big one.
That's a big one.
And we played badminton. That is our family game.
Okay.
Did everyone wear white pants and straw hats?
No, although I should enforce that in my family. Yeah. Apparently, after I left, my whole family watched The Revenant. My grandmother and aunt sat down and watched The Revenant, which is this Leonardo DiCaprio movie about surviving in the wild, and he kills a bear.
Yeah.
And it's supposed to be very gruesome and bloody. And yeah, I guess my grandmother was into it. It's interesting.
Did that surprise you? Or is she that kind of personality?
She's very much into
killing wildlife.
Yeah, killing bears, killing hawks. Yeah, she's insane.
Okay, then.
I think she's being sarcastic, but I'm not sure. The Phil Vischer podcast is brought to you by you, viewers like you and listeners like you. You can go to patreon.com/Phil Vischer and you can support the show so we can pay Jason, our director, editor, and our unnamed, unpaid intern, whose name is but we won't let that get up. What'd you do for 4th of July?
I'm trying to remember. What did we do?
2 weeks ago.
Yeah. Well, we went to the fireworks here in Wheaton.
Okay.
We went the day before with the fireworks, and there was a party at a friend's house. We went there, and then the actual 4th of July, we didn't do a lot. We
really
just
didn't
laid low.
I was in Michigan.
Yeah, as you always are.
As always in Michigan.
This
Where
is
in
the
Michigan?
second show we've done since the 4th of July, though. Why didn't we talk about this last week?
I don't know. I didn't think of it. John Walton was here. We were going to hell, so we had to get there quickly.
Hell, Michigan?
No, we talked about hell last week on the podcast.
Oh, okay.
With John Walton.
Because there is a hell.
There is a hell, Michigan?
It's on the east side of the
Really?
state.
Well, Phil, you do you do your own
side.
fireworks.
Yeah,
so
I do my own fireworks show, and I blow a lot of stuff up. No one gets hurt.
You've built the mortar
I
shells.
build my own mortar
the
racks,
racks,
and I fuse them all together.
And do you run it on a computer?
No, because that takes the fun out of it. That's where it's like Walmart. It's just not fun anymore. You need to actually bend over and light something, or it's not doing fireworks.
Okay. What draws you to the fireworks?
I like it when they explode.
It's like the sound.
Yeah, it's visceral. There's something that it wakes you up, I like an explosion that you can feel in your chest.
Yeah.
That's what I like.
Just like Alien.
Or concerts.
Not
I like
Alien.
when you can feel the bass.
Because this is an explosion that's coming from the outside in, and that's the opposite of Alien. I don't like inside out explosions. Those are more digestive and unfortunate.
Right.
Okay. So when Katelyn shows up, she brings stories with her. She is the managing editor.
Yes.
Is that okay? Managing editor of Christianity Today print.
Yes.
Does that mean they don't let you do anything on the internet?
No, they have me doing lots of stuff on the internet too.
Okay.
So we host our own podcast, Quick to Listen, that goes up on our website every week, and then I get handed pieces.
And you blog at Hermeneutics.
I don't blog there regularly, although I will.
Irregularly blogs.
Let's not use that word. Irregularly.
Okay.
How's your blogging going? It's kind of irregular.
Irregular.
Anything I can do about that?
Something.
Yes.
I had an explosion from the inside out.
I haven't been able to blog recently because I've been writing something else.
Oh, yeah. What did you write?
I'm glad you asked.
A stage play? Was it? No. What did you? Caitlin wrote a book. She's holding it up. For those of you who are listening, she's holding up a book. It says, it's called A Woman's Place, Katelyn Beaty.
Okay, can I make a comment
Can I talk about the book first?
Yeah, but no, I need to make a comment.
Okay.
Okay.
I am impressed.
It's a good-looking book.
I am very impressed that you this is your first book, and your name is just as large as the title.
Yeah. How does that happen?
It's actually bigger than Christine Kane.
I have not reached that point where any publisher will make my name as large as the title, because there comes a point in a writer's career, at least a successful writer's career, where the title of the book doesn't matter. It's the author's name that takes up most of the book, but you're starting off equal to the title.
How'd that happen? Was that your insistence?
No. I mean, we went through a lot of different book cover designs, and a lot of them had there was one with a woman with red hair, and I was like, no. And then there was a floral pattern, and I was like, no. So I like.
And they got so frustrated with you that they just said, okay, no pictures.
Yeah.
Well, because most women's books are packaged to look very floral and kind of traditionally feminine, and I actually hope that some men read the book, even though the word woman is in the title.
And it is in pink.
And there's pink,
Right. But as I said before,
they can read the ebook.
It's subversive. No. My use of pink is subversive. Your use is exploitative.
Yes.
Okay.
So anyway.
The book is about.
So as you know, Skye.
It's not a cookbook.
There are. Okay, we should cut that. You don't want that on record, Skye.
It's clearly a joke. I have been.
It's just a joke.
Just like her use of.
Well, no, but
subversive.
the whole point of your title is you're playing off of that stereotype, right? A Woman's Place is the name of the book, and how does the rest of the the cliche go?
Is in the home.
Is in big business.
But more recently.
Is in the boardroom.
No, it's actually A Woman's Place is in the White House.
Oh.
And the Senate.
Oh, are you?
That's the subversive.
Is this an announcement?
Yeah.
But it's actually not.
Is that an endorsement?
No, it's not.
Your hand in the ring.
So
you might want to have that taken out.
It's not. As you know, the conversation about faith and work and the integration of the two.
I've heard of it.
Has taken off a lot in the past 10, 20 years with the leadership of people like Tim Keller and Tom Nelson. But I would say that conversation tends to be directed toward men. So, for example, you'll have the Bible study about faith and work connected to the men's ministry, or the women's Bible studies are only held during the daytime at a church. So that assumes that women are available during the day and are not working a full-time job.
Right.
So I wanted to way into the conversation from a distinctly female perspective. I mean, it's not a memoir. I'm only 31, so stop me if I ever say that I want to write a memoir before age 40. But it is...
Because you don't have to now, because you already did.
Yeah, but no. But wanting to...
Malala wrote a memoir, and what is she, 18?
Yeah, she was shot in the head and then got the Nobel.
I feel.
Where do you go from there?
I don't know.
It's
you
like
write a memoir.
It's a downhill slope.
It's like being a
memoir, and you retire to Florida.
It's like being a gold medalist in gymnastics at 14.
Right.
What do you do other than
72 pounds?
Yeah.
Carrie Strug.
Yeah.
Amazing.
Mary Lou Retton?
Well, you become a motivational speaker,
and then you do a backflip off the stage.
I guess. Okay.
You should work that into your speaking.
Here's something that you said in the book, which I thought was interesting. While all of us risk turning work into an idol, I believe most Christian women today run another risk, missing out on the goodness of work, on the ways that God intends to bless them and others through it. Is that still an issue? Do you still? Because it feels like haven't we advanced?
So I think in this area, you won't hear any pastor saying women shouldn't work outside the home.
In this area, geographically.
I do still think, though, that women who work professionally and are raising children face some more subtle social exclusion.
Yeah.
either because of, the Bible study being held during the day, or because whenever their pastor talks about women in the community, it's always like praising the stay-at-home mom and never like the woman who's running a business or running a nonprofit. So I don't, I mean, there are still conservative Christians who would teach.
Or managing a magazine.
It is pretty... Well, that's only if the actual product is named.
Christianity Today.
Right? Like there you go.
On newsstands now.
So
edited by Katelyn Beaty.
It does strike me how much of the way a lot of churches structure their ministries is still predicated on a very old assumption of a nuclear family.
Right.
1950.
Men golf, women cook.
Well,
women are available during the day, men only in the evenings or on weekends.
I think it's less than 50% of the U.S. population, though, are married people with children who it's a first marriage and they have children. Right. So, but yet most churches just assume that's who they're reaching.
Right.
And they structure their ministries along those lines, and they assume that kids are coming from homes where they have a mom and a dad or whatever. And, so this is just one piece of that.
But don't we have to make some assumptions to be able to program anything?
Well, I think that's part of the problem is the old assumptions that we'd like to hang on to, or some would like to hang on to, don't really work anymore, which is what gives so much anxiety to people.
Yeah. I mean, I will say as a single professional woman, it would matter to me a lot to hear my pastor talk about just work in general, not even women working, but just professional work. Like, how does that contribute to goodness in the world? How's that part of God's mission in the world?
They do have that talk, but it's during the men's ministry.
It's the men's breakfast on Saturday morning.
Honestly, I've never heard my pastor talk about professional work.
Where do you go to church? What's his name? We can put out an APB. And
hey, Johnny, get with the program. Katelyn's frustrated. Is his name John?
What if I were to tell you his name was Johnny? Pastor Johnny. No, it's not.
Bad.
And right after the offering, they go, "Here's Johnny."
Yeah, so shining reference is what we need to reach the next generation. But
actually, that was
he was referencing the reference of the reference.
This is Johnny Carson, The Tonight Show.
I'm too young.
You're too young. I actually caught myself watching reruns of The Tonight Show that are playing on one of those cable stations, and it was like from the early 80s. And I remember that era pretty well. And I'm like, dang, I'm old.
Yeah.
How old were you in the early 80s?
I was a kid.
2.
No, I was born in 76. So, I was in my
formative
my elementary
years.
I was in high school.
He's 10 years older than I am.
Yeah.
Cool. So we're representing each generation.
Why'd you write the book?
So I wanted to both affirm women who feel called to professional work, say that there are models to pursue both professional work and meaningful, engaged parenting at the same time, to say that ambition is not a dirty word, but it can be a very good thing and key to living purposefully before God.
Right. And I have read that that's something that tends to keep women back professionally, is this feeling that it's unappealing or unbecoming of a woman to be ambitious.
Oh, yeah. She's an ambitious woman is not a compliment.
Yeah. That's become an issue in the political campaign.
Yeah.
Or she's career-oriented. That's not a compliment.
Right, okay.
We don't describe men as being career-oriented. We just assume that they are.
Right. Well, because they're supposed to. It's the law. Because you have to go out and change the world so that you can take care of your wife and your kids.
Right. Yeah, that is one model.
Yeah.
Of doing life together as a family, and it works for a lot. Well, Phil. Yeah. So I talk about this is I'm by the way, I've already gotten flack for this book and it's not even out yet.
From who?
How does that?
Can I name his name?
You can do whatever you want. I don't know.
Like a celebrity?
A very popular writer who writes regularly at the American Conservative.
Yeah.
Responded to a piece that was written about me in The Atlantic saying that if she's not a mom, she can't write about motherhood.
Oh.
But one of the passages that might stir something is I say that a dad is not a babysitter.
Yeah. I'm with you.
Okay. Why does that stir something?
Because I think it's assumed that women still bear the primary responsibility for taking care of children.
I think that's,
and if Dad's home alone with the kids, he's babysitting.
Or it's like, I would never be able to do this by myself.
My wife sometimes does call me the fourth child.
Really?
Yeah.
As a compliment?
No.
I love you so much. You're like my fourth child.
No. It's more like when she's gone for a while and I'm supposed to be in control of the household and she comes back and is like, what happened? Like,
yeah.
I sometimes don't keep things as
in order,
or maybe even know where my children are.
Oh, okay.
So
is it because you're in your little office reading a book?
Maybe.
Okay.
Maybe. I prefer to think that I just choose to empower my children and adhere to a more free range kind of parenting style.
Right.
Yeah.
At midnight on a school night.
Right.
Yeah.
So I'm not, unfortunately, helping you debunk the stereotype.
Yeah. Don't be like Skye in this regard.
Yeah.
In other regards, it's fine.
So you talked to a lot of women.
Yes.
Before you wrote the book.
I interviewed.
You actually did research.
Yes. I didn't just want to write a book where it was me sitting at my desk thinking important thoughts and writing them down.
Women.
So this is not with a Christian publisher then?
Well, Howard is the faith imprint of Simon & Schuster. So it's definitely geared toward a Christian audience, and it's thoroughly Christian in its framing.
And give us one example of a really interesting woman that you interviewed that made a big impact on you.
So the first woman that I profile, her name is Laura Waters Hinson. She's a documentary filmmaker based in DC, and she talks about when she had her first child, she was very committed to being at home with him in the first year, and it was a very hard year. He was colicky and had all sorts of health problems, and she, at the end of that first year, she felt like all of my creative pursuits have died. Like, I'll never be able to return to filmmaking again. And then a year or so after that, she received a grant to film a documentary film project in Rwanda, and she ended up taking her whole family, including her mother, and at that point they had 2 children, and ended up profiling how Christians in Rwanda are continuing the reconciliation process after the genocide 22 years ago. And she said it was like a rebirth of her creative pursuits. And I think that can happen in women's lives. Like you move through different seasons, and something that you thought you had to say no to forever, now that you're in this different season, you can return to, and that God could even invite you into that, to invest more fully into that, even as a parent of young children.
Very cool.
So the book alternates between chapters where you're unpacking an idea and then a story, a profile of a woman you interviewed. So that makes for good reading.
Okay, who's the book for?
It's for humans.
That's a little broad. That would be hard to market.
It's for Christian humans.
Okay, getting better.
I've accepted that a majority of my readers will be women and will resonate with women in a very particular way. But I also hope that men read the book, because I think it's a conversation for whole church communities, for people who have impact in how people think about their work. And that's often pastors or, spiritual leaders in a community. And then also I think this is a conversation for families between husbands and wives.
Cool. All right. So wives can buy it for their husbands right before they tell them they're going back to work and their husband needs to stay home with the kids.
Yeah.
Just so you know.
That'd be interesting.
Well, congratulations, because I know it's a big undertaking. How long did it take you?
It really kind of, I want to say, it stunk.
Yeah. All right. I heard one writer say, when asked, do you like to write, he would reply, I like having written.
Yes. Oh my gosh. The actual process itself is
That's how I felt
lonely,
about writing scripts too.
Isolating. You feel like you're in your own head all the time. You can't remember the last time you took a shower. You don't see daylight.
Now that the book is out, have you showered?
I think so.
Okay.
Yeah.
Well, I'm thinking for a minute here, you write all the time because you're managing a magazine. Like,
I think if I had been doing a different job while writing a book, it wouldn't have been so hard. But I was using the word part of my brain.
I totally get that.
So it was hard, and I just wrote a lot on Saturdays and Sundays. But I'm really glad that it's out. And
I wrote a bunch of my book actually on Sunday mornings during the Sunday school hour after I would drop off my kids at church, and then I would go to McDonald's and sit and pound out a couple thousand words and then go back for the second service.
That's impressive.
Wow.
So I use Sunday school as childcare for the writing of my book. I'm not sure you're supposed to do that.
Do you give credit to the church nursery or Sunday school?
No,
for
I
that?
didn't.
I wrote my first book over an 18-month process, probably mostly between 9 p.m. and 1 a.m. Because it was always after my kids were in bed.
Are you a night owl?
No.
That's the only time.
That's the only time I could do it because I was working and my kids were really little and we had babies and that was the only.
Did you feel exhausted?
Oh my gosh, it was horrible.
How many babies did you have at that time?
Amanda, I think, was pregnant with our third because it came out just after Lucy was born.
Oh, okay.
Yeah.
Cool. Okay, we do have other stories today. Where do we get your book, Katelyn? Wherever fine books are sold?
Yeah, so obviously you might have heard of Amazon.
Okay.
Which it's on there. It can be pre-ordered, but you might as well just order it
when does it
tomorrow,
come
which is
out?
the day that it's out.
It's out tomorrow.
July 19th.
It's out the day this podcast goes live.
It's out the day this podcast goes live. Holy cow.
Hey guys,
what's
buy
your
it.
timing?
Buy it now and boost her Amazon standings
if you
because
want
this is
to buy it,
important to an author. I'll
buy
tell you
it
that.
fast and then leave a review on Amazon, which also helps her.
Yes, it does.
Well, unless you have negative things to say, then just keep it to yourself.
But you can still buy it. Buy it. Right?
Yeah,
You can buy it, but don't.
You can buy it even if you don't like it.
Right.
How do you know? Okay. Katelyn suggested some stories. We're going to jump into them. Do you know who Perry Noble is?
I do.
Heard of him.
I didn't know who Perry Noble was.
I know who he is now.
Skye, have you interviewed him? Do you know Perry Noble?
I don't think I've interviewed him, but
Okay.
I have been in circles.
But he started a church in
South Carolina
that became large, New Spring Church.
Largest church in South Carolina, multiple sites.
Really?
Yeah.
And he just had to resign because he was struggling with alcohol. That's the story.
Well, that's part of the story, I think.
Okay.
There's also a line in there about not honoring his marriage.
Oh, there is.
But
But let's talk about the alcohol.
Let's stick to the alcohol thing because Ed Stetzer wrote a piece. Is this in the magazine or just on the blog?
It's on our website.
Christianity Today website, and the angle is kind of interesting because Perry Noble is an evangelical pastor, and traditionally evangelicals don't drink. Traditionally,
Yeah.
especially evangelical pastors, right?
Yeah.
But that's changing.
Yes.
I've even seen that in my own extended family, where complete teetotalers a generation ago. Well, now even my mom has a glass of wine with a meal. It's like her parents would have flipped out about that.
Yeah.
So the angle here that Ed takes, which I think is interesting, is that evangelicals may be less equipped to handle people who are struggling with alcohol because we have so little historical experience with alcohol.
That's interesting.
I just don't buy it. I gotta admit,
Okay,
I don't buy
Skye,
it.
why don't you buy it? Because you've been drinking since you were 7.
Yeah, sure. No, this is in no way an advocacy for consumption of alcohol or for teetotaling. Either way, it's the idea that, as a culture overall, since post-prohibition, alcoholism has not been an unknown problem, right? It's pervasive in our culture, and I think just whether you are an evangelical or not, people who struggle with alcohol, we all know about Alcoholics Anonymous.
Yes.
Right? We all know about various programs that exist
But
to
it's
help.
also called Alcoholics Anonymous. So there is a level of secrecy or even shame that people have about an addiction or a misuse of alcohol.
There is Celebrate Recovery. There's all. I don't think that the evangelical church, at least over the last 30 years, could be accused of being non-therapeutic.
Yeah.
And so if somebody is, and this has nothing to do with Perry Noble or his circumstances, I don't know enough about him, but to say if somebody is struggling with alcohol who's a pastor is going to have a harder time finding help because evangelicals historically haven't dealt with alcohol. I remember growing up in a Baptist church where almost everyone was a teetotaler, and yet there were alcoholic support groups that met right in our church.
But not for the congregation.
Well,
They were for
it's
other people. Because evangelical churches saved people from alcohol. then you
Demon
became
rum.
demon rum, and then you became a Christian.
So that's why I don't get Ed's argument. It's so if somebody's struggling with alcohol in an evangelical church, they don't know.
It's that we understand alcoholism outside the church, but inside the church, like born and bred evangelical struggling with alcohol.
If your pastor is struggling with alcohol, he's not even going to bring it up.
Well, normally if a pastor's struggling with anything, they're not going to bring it up. We've just created a structure that doesn't allow pastors to seek help in any way.
If they're struggling with credit card debt,
they probably are not going to bring it up. Maybe I've just been around way too long.
For Dave Ramsey.
I have known pastors that have been struggling with gambling addictions. Obviously,
What's their name? So
there's so many different maladies that pastors and church leaders struggle with, and I think in general we haven't created a system.
I honestly, so this sounds super cynical, but I'm a journalist, so I'm allowed to be cynical.
That's usually what Skye does.
I was actually somewhat relieved that this wasn't another story about a pastor with sexually inappropriate behavior. That storyline is so cliched. It's like so predictable. This seems like something that is easily more manageable. Like it doesn't seem as severe.
Here's the thing. I mean, you're right. Throw a stone, you can hit a story about a pastor who's been unfaithful. But as we've been told in many settings, it's not about the core issue here is not usually a sexual
addiction,
discretion or lack of discretion. You know, it has its root in something far deeper in the person's life, in their background, in their family, in their marriage, whatever. Right. It manifests itself in that kind of thing. But I think that's the same likely with alcoholism. You know, it's a manifesting symptom of a deeper issue that was never dealt with. And that is really, it sounds stupid, but it's hard for me. When I get with a group of pastors, and I have regularly over the years, it's very rare to find one of us who is generally emotionally and relationally healthy. We are a messy bunch of people. And so it isn't surprising then that an awful lot of them end up manifesting in alcoholism or sexual unfaithfulness or all kinds of other problems.
So one of the things that comes out in this reported piece and then in Ed Stetzer's follow-up is that Perry Noble said he was having a really hard time managing all the responsibilities and pressures put on him as the senior pastor. Like instead of resting, taking a full Sabbath or meeting with an accountability group or developing a really rich prayer life, he was turning to alcohol to deal with the pressures. And honestly, we do put a lot of pressure on senior pastors to keep things running. And it doesn't surprise me that at some point, a pastor is a human, newsflash, and can't handle the pressures, especially when they're in such a public spotlight. Right.
And this is also, I can't speak to the details of Perry Noble's case, but I do know his church, I believe, is non-denominational. It's an independent mega church, as many of them are. And a lot of times those churches, and the stories, again, are everywhere. Those churches are typically built around a very dynamic leader's personality. And sometimes those leaders find themselves helming a sizable congregation at an incredibly young age.
Right.
Again, because of their personalities, it just grows. So there isn't an authority structure that can say to, a 27-year-old young man with a dynamic preaching ability to say, you know what, you have this gift and it's really powerful and really attractive to a lot of people. We're actually going to not let you have control of a mega church yet because your soul is not yet ready to handle that kind of. So when you divorce those structures to protect and nurture young people, and they find themselves in these horribly complicated, stressful circumstances, are we that shocked that they don't handle it well?
So do you think more churches should say, we see and affirm your gift, but you can't have the reins for another 10 years? I think you have to have lived life and gone through some humbling experiences first.
I think what every gifted leader in the church needs are really godly men and women around that person who are spiritual fathers and mothers who can care more about that person's well-being than about the effectiveness of their ministry.
Yeah, I mean,
that have authority
to
do something about it,
as a peer and as a mentor to step in and say, and it sounds like, frankly, that's what happened in Perry Noble's case, where they said repeatedly they went to him and tried to deal with this, but it wasn't working. And but I think we got to look at, Dallas Willard was always fond of saying that your system is perfectly designed to produce the results you are experiencing. And when you look at evangelical churches, and especially mega churches, we are seeing this constant stream of broken stories of pastors and their families and their churches. And at one point or another, we have to stop and not spiritualize this and say, well, the enemy was coming after him because look how effective his ministry was, and go, well, maybe the way we've structured ministry in the first place is actually what's causing this to happen over and over and over again.
And if we care more about church growth than about an individual's soul and salvation, that's an idol.
Yeah. And frankly, in a lot of the ministries that I look at and I go to and engage with, we measure the wrong fruit.
Right.
We're looking at how many people are coming on Sunday, how big is it growing, how impactful is it being, how many books are being sold, whatever. And you're not asking,
how big is this platform?
Right. How big is this platform? Rather than asking, are we seeing evidence of the fruit of the Spirit in this person's life?
And does this get worse in a culture where we feel like we're losing as the church?
Yeah.
Wait,
so
what are you basing that on?
We're more
statement.
What? Yes. My yes.
Is it that we're afraid of loss of cultural power, and so we're putting even more pressure on ourselves to grow our churches?
I think we are more eager to celebrate success, measurable, visible cultural success, because we're so desperate.
See, I feel like this has been a problem forever. I mean, at least for the past 50 years.
It's not new.
Who was willing to address Martin Luther's drinking problem?
Well, that actually raises another interesting point.
How about his anti-Semitism? That was a bit of a problem too.
Which is our attitudes and beliefs about alcohol use are culturally conditioned. So one of the reasons that the Southern Baptist Convention preaches a refrain from alcohol, at least among its leaders, is that in many poor, working class, white Southern communities, alcohol really was used to destroy. It was destroying lives, and it was leading to all these other sins and vices. And I think that actually is one of the root. The liquid alcohol is not sinful. It's that alcohol
to gaseous alcohol
or solid alcohol. Is that a Jello shot?
I don't know why I said liquid alcohol. Gelatinous alcohol.
Aqueous solution.
It's that alcohol. We understand that alcohol actually disables our better instincts.
Yes.
It's its connection to other kinds of behaviors that it's problem. There's nothing inherently evil about that bottle, right? It's your relationship to the bottle.
Right. Alcohol doesn't hurt people. People hurt people.
Yeah. And if we outlaw it, then only outlaws will have alcohol.
Which we tried.
Which we did and was actually true.
Yeah.
What do you know about that? Okay. We got another story. Do you think there'll be more troubles with alcohol in conservative evangelicalism because we hipster evangelicals have decided it's no big deal and don't take it very seriously anymore?
No.
I do think, though, that in certain evangelical segments, there is a corrective to like, oh, my parents were teetotalers and they never let us... they never drank.
There's
and I'm not going to be like that. I'm going to go to pub theology talk.
Yeah, there's a lot of guys wearing plaid shirts with pearlized snap buttons and beards who love to have their beer because they think they're being more reformed.
A cross tattoo.
Yeah, that's happening for us.
So 2012.
That's happening here for a season, but I think. Again, the bigger issue here is not alcohol or unfaithfulness in marriage. It's what are the underlying unhealthy structures that not only attract people into ministry, but keep them isolated, that allows these things to fester in their souls. And in some cases, maybe we'll see more alcoholism because it's more socially acceptable for pastors to be drinking, but it's just adding to the variety of vices they can pick from to self-destruct.
Okay. That's fantastic.
Isn't that an uplifting little message?
And the solution is, do we have a solution? Do we have a recommendation? 3 easy steps to alcohol-proof your pastor?
Well,
accountability.
I would say not alcohol-proof, but
accountability.
Vice-proof your pastor. One is accountability.
Yeah.
Secondly is measuring and validating pastors for the right things.
Okay.
Rather than...
Do you think godliness is more important than church growth? Is that what you're implying?
All I'm saying is I think we should measure our ministries no differently than we would measure Jesus' ministry. And at the end of his ministry, he didn't have any followers left.
Yeah.
And yet he was totally faithful to the Father.
But surely we wouldn't say that having a platform and drawing people with your dynamic preaching of the gospel is sinful.
Absolutely not. No, but the people who I think have done that really well are people who've had the gravity of soul to handle that kind of responsibility. Right. And I've been a part of conversations which I can't repeat in detail of who was there with him, but it's been really disheartening when you're sitting there talking to people who are responsible for organizing some very large conferences.
Can we just say that they're men? I mean, they're men, right? Like these are the people who organize these conferences.
I don't think gender is relevant to this conversation. But
interesting.
Here's what is relevant.
I'm shifting in my chair.
It's disheartening when they are figuring out who to put on those very large platforms, and what's being the determining factor is the celebrityness of them, or how big is their ministry. Are they a draw? Rather than are they mature? First of all, should everyone else be listening to this person? Right. And secondly, are they strong and healthy and mature enough to handle what it's going to do to them to put them on a platform in front of 15,000 people?
Part of the issue is the way that we've connected church leadership to ability to sell books, to ability to appear and get invited to all the major conferences, to attract people to fill a stadium. Right. We've commodified
I call it the evangelical industrial complex.
And it's because we're learning marketing techniques from the world.
Right.
Well, that you need to look for people who you can market, and this is how you market.
Right.
So therefore, I mean, it's why reality TV works.
I had a Christian publishing executive tell me probably 10 years ago in a private conversation, we're kind of looking at the landscape of what's going on. And he admitted to me, he said, in today's economy, in today's marketplace, a Eugene Peterson never gets published.
The only reason that Eugene Peterson himself can get published is because he's Eugene Peterson.
Right, because he's already on. But if he was unknown, his books are profoundly...
But what if he had one of those cool haircuts? Like where the sides are shaved, but then there's a big coif of hair on the top.
Maybe, but the problem is he still only had a church.
And his wife was hot.
He only had a church of a couple hundred people. Yeah. And that's not a big enough market.
So we need to focus less on being successful and more on being holy.
I think we need to focus.
Except that I feel like that's a little bit of a false dichotomy.
Yeah, that's what I said. It isn't about one or the other.
But it's focus. It's focus. What prioritize.
Well, in some sense, we'd want to say, well, be holy and pursue holiness, and the growth will follow. But that's actually not true.
That's not necessarily true.
It's not true. Look at the prophets.
I think we need to be our brothers and sisters' keepers. And ask not just what's going to be good for business or what's going to be good for companies, so what's good for them.
How many of us actually have access to speak into the lives of our pastors? Very, very few.
That's why it begins with their own families, their own relationships, their own elder boards, their own church families.
But the same as a lot of family businesses, the founder ends up surrounding themselves just with relatives and friends.
Well, and that's, I think, part of the problem with the megachurch structure. Right. Not all megachurches, but some of them, where the boards of some of these churches are comprised of other megachurch pastors who are friends of the senior pastor.
Right, and return the favor for approving my salary. And
So there's no real accountability.
And actually, that is, to me, is just as sinful and problematic as any personal vices that the pastor pursues.
What is?
Surrounding yourself with a board that has the appearance of accountability, but it is in fact just a group of your friends who hope that you'll return the favor is hypocrisy.
And you go back and look at some of the more high profile megachurch pastors who have lost their ministries, flamed out or done.
But we're not going to name names.
Well, that's not important. But you go back and you'll eventually, the story will come out of people who worked alongside them, or who were in the board, and they said, you know what, there were red flags all along the way, but none of us wanted to say anything because look how effective the ministry was. Right. And if this guy went down, it meant hundreds of people losing their jobs.
Or the name of the ministry would be tarnished. And think of how many people would lose.
And that's a sign.
Not hear the gospel.
That's a sign that there's something unhealthy about the structure itself.
Yes, just as a reminder to listeners, God can do his work in the world he doesn't need us.
As a pastor friend of mine likes to say, in the Old Testament, it was a miracle when God spoke through an ass, but now he does it every Sunday. You can use anyone.
That's Skye's favorite joke.
It is one of my favorite jokes.
You've told it many times.
I have. Phil's rolling his eyes like, oh yeah.
It's a really
so
good
many times.
pastor joke.
It is a pastor joke.
It is a good pastor. Okay, one more story. Can we do one more story?
Mm-hmm.
Yeah.
We don't have a ton of time left, but
Oh my gosh.
I know.
When you're having fun.
I know. And boy, were we. Andy Crouch. Do you know Andy?
I do.
You know Andy?
Of course.
Yeah, he's been on the show twice. He's been on the show twice, I think. But he doesn't get to town very often. He wrote a piece it was in the magazine?
Yes.
In the magazine called Stop Engaging the Culture Because It Doesn't Exist. Did he write that headline or did someone else? Because that's
we definitely played it up for the web. We wanted to make it.
Is this like the Matrix? Is it one of these, kind of the red pill, blue pill kind of thing?
Okay, here's what he says. So Andy is right, and that's a great headline that grabs you. The culture does not exist. He says he is on social media, but he never uses social media. So he has these accounts that he's never used. And so he gets emails from the accounts trying to suggest things he would be interested in, but they have no knowledge of him as a person because he never uses them.
So they're like placeholder accounts that he has?
He just got them and then just never got around to using them.
Okay.
So Twitter was suggesting people he should follow.
He's on Twitter.
He says he doesn't use it enough, or maybe it was a different account on Twitter. And they suggested on one of his dormant accounts that he should follow Ellen DeGeneres, CNN Breaking News, and Kim Kardashian. That was their assessment.
And if you know Andy, you know that's exactly his passions.
So then he makes the point that that's like us talking about the culture generically as this monolithic thing, and which it isn't. It says a nation of 300 million people, especially one as diverse as the United States, does not have one monolithic culture. And then he actually gets into the depths of, the different words in the New Testament, the word for the world in Greek versus the word for nations or peoples.
Ethnos versus cosmos.
Yes.
Yeah.
Exactly.
And I didn't even read the article.
You get a gold star.
Yay! I went to school.
So he says instead of preoccupying ourselves with the cosmos, we are called to the ethne, rather than engaging in largely imaginary relationships with the world system by, say, following celebrities on Twitter, people we will never meet or influence or be able to love. We are called to real people in a real place. The less bound we are by the culture, the more we're able to actually influence culture around us.
Yeah, it's a really interesting argument. And it is the case that I think, especially in this particular moment, we have a lot of fear in Christian circles about, quote unquote, the culture, failing to realize that first of all, we are already in culture. The culture isn't something out there. And we're actually part of cultures. There's not just one.
Right.
I mean, it's a good thing. It's not one person dictating the boundaries of reality for us. We are participants and not just recipients of culture.
So your church has a culture, your place of work has a culture.
Your family has a culture. Your neighborhood has a culture.
Yeah. Which culture are we supposed to take over and change for Christ?
And which culture war are we fighting?
Yeah. Which culture do we declare war on?
It kind of reminds me of Seinfeld. You remember when Seinfeld...
Is that the first time you've ever said you guys on the show? Because that's what Christian usually says.
Hey, you guys.
Hey, you guys.
You remember when Seinfeld, one of the episodes of his show, said something like, people, they're the worst.
Yeah.
Just people.
People,
Well, which people?
Yeah.
All people?
Which people?
Which people? Right. Some people are great.
So Andy ends up by saying, likewise, our mission is not primarily to, quote, engage the culture, but to, quote, love our neighbor. Our neighbor is not an abstract collective noun, but a real person in a real place. So would the church be more effective if we stopped thinking about, quote unquote, the culture and just thought about the people right in front of us.
It's kind of interesting given that Andy wrote a book called Culture Making.
But actually it dovetails very nicely with that book in that he's very few of us will ever have the capacity to...
What is going on?
Taco
the Bell is trying to get your attention.
Yeah, he's like teasing me.
Skye, I miss you. You haven't poked me in a while.
A lot of Christians think, well, if either I try to go into politics and shape the culture,
politics is way downstream,
or if I get the right person in the White House, then
or the Supreme Court,
then we or the Supreme Court, then we can kind of secure the direction of the culture. When in fact, as you just said, Skye, politics is a reaction as much as it is a direction of where way
downstream.
Right. The fact that our government is borrowing more money than it can pay back is probably downstream of the fact that we as people have been borrowing more money on credit cards than we can pay back, for 20, 30 years.
Or to talk about the real hot button issue of the last couple of years, it's not an accident that the Supreme Court created or affirmed a constitutional right to same-sex marriage only after... only after 50% of the population polled agreed with same-sex marriage. So they were reacting in a way to the cultural...
I mean, there were states that were pushing to legalize same-sex unions, but even that was as much a reflection of what the people in a democracy were already enacting and doing in their lives as it was a directive.
Yeah. So the idea that you're going to reverse that by starting at the Supreme Court is somewhat naive.
Right.
But on some of these issues, I mean, how, like on the issue of, I don't know, divorce or something, like do we have the agency to affect cultural change on hot button issues?
But to Andy's point, if you have neighbors whose marriages are in trouble, are there things you can do to help them, support them, care for them, whatever? Well, yeah, I have a little bit more access to that than I do the culture.
So should we not try to have influence at the highest levels?
I think that actually gets to your book and probably a matter of calling and vocation. I'm grateful that there are women and men who are followers of Christ who are called into government or law or whatever.
So I think all Christians are called to cultural contribution in some capacity, but that does not mean that all of us are to seek very high profile, visible roles. And that actually goes back to the story of the pastors thinking that the one perfect model of ministry is to start a church, or to be on senior leadership of a church, when in fact there's many more ways to be a Christian living out their calling meaningfully in the world than to be on a church staff.
Here's a question. I had this conversation. I preached in church yesterday. I preached. They let me. I know, you're stunned.
But okay, I listened to your message this morning, and you at the very beginning said you're not a preacher.
I know.
And you're not a theologian or a Bible scholar. But you said I'm a storyteller.
Yeah, so I told a story.
So you told a story.
Yeah, I told a story.
So you played to your strengths.
But it had to do with culture because it was about how do we live in exile, how to, and based on the Israelites in Babylon, and is there anything to learn there that we can apply? But afterwards, why did I bring that up? Because afterwards I was having a conversation with someone about our role in this society, and politically speaking, this was the question. You know the phrase "swing above your weight"? Can you swing? Can you actually make more of an impact than your body size should be?
I think it's a boxing idiom.
Probably, yeah. Like it's not your weight class. You're actually stronger than your weight class would imply. And in politics, it's if you swing above your weight, it means you're a smaller group of the voting population, but you have more impact than your size.
Like the NRA.
Yeah. So the question that I posed to him was, should Christians attempt to swing above their weight politically, where you're strategizing, you're organizing, you're trying to, we're going to get out our votes in higher levels than you get out your vote so that we can swing the culture, the policy our way. Is that something that Christians should try to do, or should we literally just all vote our conscience and leave the rest up to God?
Well, I think voting your conscience is a thorny and somewhat separate issue, but I would say looking at the specific...
Are you against voting your conscience?
Looking at the specific presidential election, I don't know how any Christians have that much hope invested in our, at least federal political system to enact good change. Like we're in an election season where neither candidate has been able to energize.
It sounds like you're walking back.
Hopes.
You're walking back your endorsement of Hillary Clinton here.
Okay. Is there any way we can scratch this from the record? Because I did not endorse Hillary Clinton.
I am kidding.
It was the magazine endorsing, right? Not you.
Actually, my first editorial for CT was on Christians' hatred of Hillary Clinton, but that was not an endorsement.
When
of
was
her.
that?
2008.
Wow.
Okay.
Yeah, it is amazing. Christians don't like Donald Trump. They're not fond of, well, some are, okay. But they're not fond of his behavior. They're not fond of his
character,
his manner. But
statistically, they're going for him.
The vitriol against Hillary Clinton
is so deep.
Yes, I am kind of amazed.
I think it has festered a lot longer.
That's true.
It has saturated deeper.
It is an abscess that has grown large and ugly.
Yeah.
Thank you.
That's a wonderful image.
On that note.
All right. Which story should we sing about?
Sing a drinking song.
Yeah, get out your pint glasses.
99 bottles of beer on the wall.
Hey, Pastor, should we drink? I'd really like to know what you think, or should we go back to the 40s and 30s when Christians wouldn't drink anything? Should we go back to prohibition like our grandparents who were on a mission to stomp out demon rum? Or was that whole thing kind of dumb? And should we vote for the Donald or the Hillary, or just move to Mars and eat some celery today? All right, thanks, everybody. See, the celery on Mars is weightless, so it's higher in nutritional value. Go to patreon.com/Phil Vischer, and you can support the show. Go to ChristianityToday.com and type in Katelyn Beaty, and she'll come to your house and cook you dinner. And see her, but check out her new book, A Women's Place, Katelyn Beaty.
Celery is not weightless on Mars.
Now available. Oh, yeah. Oh, how do you know? How do you know?
Because nothing's weightless on Mars.
You've never been on Mars with celery, have you?
Let's
you
wrap
act
this
like
up,
you
boys.
have, but
Let's
you
wrap it up.
haven't. Okay,
Let's
we'll see you next week.
Put a pink bow on it.
Goodbye.
The Phil Vischer Podcast is produced by Phil Vischer Enterprises and recorded live at Jellyfish Lab Studios. This episode was edited by Jason Rugg and was fact-checked by absolutely no one. For more information, go to philvischer.com.